Hello and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today we're reviewing the astrology from March 23rd through March 29th, 2025, and we are your host. I'm Maddie,
And I'm Kaylee.
and welcome back. So we are really in Aries season this week, and there's a lot of fire energy in the sky. And so we start with this Sunday, I believe it is. It's the 23rd. Yeah.
hmm
Sunday, the sun in Aries will make that first little sextile to Pluto in Aquarius.
Yeah, so I'll share so people who are watching on YouTube can check it out. Maddie, can you see that?
Yeah. You're sharing
Okay.
your whole screen though instead of a window.
Oops. Let's try that again. Better?
There you go.
I knew that something was off. I was like, this doesn't look right. Yeah, so Sun is making a sextile to Pluto. We got a big pile up, like Maddie mentioned,
Yeah.
in Aries right now, and two of the planets are retrograde. So we got some
Yeah.
interesting energy going on there.
So I feel like we've been like not really feeling Pluto as much when we've been in Pisces season. That hasn't been a big interaction, but I do think, as we're entering Aries, like we talked about last week, that like the Sun and sextiling the Pluto kind of intensifies the Aries independence energy. The like, I need to do this, I need to take power, I need to take this action kind of thing. And that can definitely be more loud and prominent at this time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, you know, I wonder how we're gonna be like feeling with that though. Do you think like people are gonna be ready for action or how do we think that's gonna kind of play out?
I think we really want, I mean, at least I feel like for me, like I really want to be taking action. I really want to be doing things, but I also know that it's in the midst of like a significant review and it's not quite action forward. It's kind of like cleaning up things and taking preparatory action and like, with just all the Venus and Mercury retrograde in Aries.
Yeah, yeah. There is definitely a big review going on for sure. Yeah, so
Cool.
we're all feeling that to some regard, that like kind of reviews aren't really like steps in the opposite direction, but it kind of does like remind me of that adage, like one step forward, two steps back kind of thing, or two steps forward, one steps back. It's like it's not happening, like the action is not happening in like a linear fashion. It's kind of like up and down a bit.
Yeah, it's just sort of like this cleanup or this like, hey, you wanted all these ideas, but in order to do the ideas, there's like all this behind that you have to navigate. Like, I think for me, it's like wanting to take new action, but I'm left to kind of deal with or confront or revisit actions that I've previously taken in this area of my life first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there too is like the review of the thoughts of the actions,
Right.
like with Mercury being retrograde, we're like thinking back, like, oh, I had wanted to do this in the past. Did I really take action on it, or did I take enough action on it? Do I need to, revisit that? Or, um, I think actually retrogrades can be like that conversation. Like, do I need to revisit this thing, or do I need to let it go in pursuit of something else? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And yes. That's what it is. I feel like for me, it's like all these past ideas and past beliefs and even past desires with like Venus in the mix are coming up. Like, is this actually what I want to keep doing now when I want to take this action this time around? And so it's kind of like confronting that right now. But I do feel like because we've been in this cycle, like I talked a lot about this on TikTok, but because we've been in this like long-term cycle since like October of last year with Mars retrograde and Mars ruling these planets in Aries, like we really want to move forward. Like I do feel like people really want to move forward. It's just it's so slow right now. And it's still like you're still reviewing because Mercury and Venus are retrograde.
Yeah, and the eclipses being in Aries too, that was also
Right.
challenging that point. Um, yeah, so if you, I guess the thing might be if you're experiencing some level of like stagnancy or things, not going as fast as you want it, it's very reflective in like the sky and what's also going on. And um, that's okay for things to move slow or not as fast as we want them to.
Exactly. So I think and you just have to kind of, I mean, trying to tell an Aries to be patient though.
Yeah,
Try
that's
that.
that's not yeah, it's not going to happen. But we we all will feel it's interesting actually because Saturn is going to move into Aries later this year,
Right.
and that's also going to be a challenge on that Aries like fiery want to do it now energy. Again, we're going to be like having to go through the test of time, and even if we want to like burst forward. We're going to
Yeah,
be
that's gonna be
challenged in some
interesting.
way. Yeah. Yeah. Saturn does not like to be in Aries. Um,
No, and I've been so interested to see that. Like, I have a lot of Saturn and Aries friends, and they
oh, yeah.
struggle with boundaries. Yeah, a lot of my friends are like slightly younger than me, and like
Mm,
they do struggle with like long-standing work and boundaries. It's like, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how we all collectively manage that.
I wonder if I know anybody. I think my sister might have Saturn and Aries. She was born in no, not 20. What am I talking about? 1997. Would that make her Saturn and Aries? I think
I
so,
think
right?
so. Yeah, I think so, depending. But yeah, I think so.
Mm, but it's kind of, I think she's got some significant Capricorn placement, so that's like kind of balancing her out.
Well,
Hmm.
Saturn's ruling that. So interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it probably is balancing her out because it's grounding that energy a bit.
Yeah, because she's very good at remaining diligent on things.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that
maybe
probably
it's,
helps.
yeah. But otherwise, I'm not sure that I have too many people who I know that have Saturn and Aries. That's kind of like a generation that I'm a little bit too far away from to have like anybody in my like immediate sphere.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mm,
But we'll all experience it in a bit, so we'll get to have that.
yeah, for sure. So next one, on the 24th on Monday. Go ahead, Maddie.
Yes. Monday, yeah, the sun will then conjunct Mercury retrograde in the sky, right there at 4 degrees. So there's
Uh-huh.
the heart of the Mercury retrograde cycle. Last week we went through the heart of the Venus retrograde cycle, and now we're having this one with Mercury. A lot of information downloads, a lot of big conversations. Maybe things click for you. Maybe things really become more obvious in terms of your mental capacity of what you're reviewing and what ideas you have and what new ideas you want to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the sky is so dark right now. If you're thinking about it, like both Venus and Mercury are not visible in the sky. Saturn's not really visible in the sky. All we have is like Jupiter and Mars.
Yeah. And why do you say that they're not visible? Because of the distance to the sun?
Yeah, they're within the 20 degrees
Mm.
combustion zone of the sun. And so those are like often our brighter stars. Mercury's always so close to the sun. It's sometimes hard to get a good visual of Mercury at times, but Venus is our brightest star and she's not visible. There's just so much like darkening and kind of like dark night of the soul energy sometimes, I think. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely could see that. And it's a Mercury Kazemi, right? Even still, though, that Mercury is retrograde.
Yes, still Mercury can see me. It's just like that's the midpoint of the Mercury retrograde cycle here. And Mercury will then pass through the sun and it will kind of be reborn again once it gets past the sun and continue its retrograde into Pisces. But this midpoint is when there's just this heart of information, the eye of the storm, the moment of real clarity, of understanding what you've been working through in terms of like conversations, mental problems, or just new ideas that you've been reviewing.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think here, like when Mercury makes its, so this, like you said, will be its second pass by the sun, but this time moving like in the opposite direction. We might get some information about like how we want to proceed, but I think that might be um, like more information is to come. We will definitely have some information coming in, but as it continues to move back and then moves again forward, and hits the sun again, I think we'll have like the full picture at that point of like definitely like this is where I want to go. And I almost think too, like the Mercury ruled areas of our chart are getting refreshed in some way. It's almost like a cleansing as it like moves back through the sun and then moves forward. We're getting an opportunity to kind of review for a bit about those Mercury ruled houses, and then what's that new direction that we want to go in. We can't really decide where do we want to go new unless we like do some like shedding of the past and like realizing like, oh, I don't want to go there anymore. I want to go in this other direction instead. So there's like definitely some habit recognition or like some awareness of behaviors in that regard.
Right. And they always say like with the first part of the astrology, with the first part of the retrograde before the when the planets go ahead of the sun and before they station retrograde and then they station retrograde, that part of the retrograde is often just the biggest confusion, the biggest unknown, the real big surprises come up, the biggest kind of hey, wow, this is now falling apart. And then
Hmm.
when both of the planets pass through the sun, there's more kind of power back to the decisions you can make as they finish the latter half of the retrograde because you have that awareness and you have that insight now and you can make decisions with more clarity.
That makes sense. Yeah. So like before it hits the sun, we're lacking, that awareness. And then
Right.
after it hits it, like there's an awareness gain. Interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
a good day to gain awareness over things, that'll be nice and refreshing.
Yes, and shortly after that, then the next day on the 25th, that Tuesday, then Mercury will sextile Pluto as well. And so, kind of that intense feeling, the moon has also been going through Aquarius now. So, a lot more Plutonian themes, maybe a big part of that. Mercury Cassimi is about reclaiming again your power of information back. I do think like the
Mm.
Pluto Mercury thing is like a big thing about information and misinformation and what information you take from certain sources.
Oh, yeah, it can be like very discerning. Yeah, deciding what you have control over and what you don't in like the information sphere.
Right.
Um,
And just having more powerful conversations too. Like maybe personally, you're having more powerful have conversations in terms of what you want, what you need, and then maybe collectively you're, yeah, being more discerning, being more aware of how power is being influenced to you in terms of information, knowledge, and all of that.
mm, yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, so Pluto, like a Pluto aspect sitting on the other side of that conjunction with the sun. I too feel like it could be like the like a continuation, I guess, of like the unveiling of information. It's like
Right.
Pluto can kind of represent sometimes like what we didn't see, because it was like so deep and so dark, we couldn't get there. But like having that aspect immediately after, it's like um, there's some kind of continuation of the information that's like coming up from below.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's like a hidden information you're now aware of and you now
Hmm.
understand. And you're like, oh, okay. Gotta work with
Great.
this now.
Yeah, love that.
Secrets coming
Yeah.
out.
I know, like sometimes it's like, well, I would have preferred not to have known that, but I guess I had to. So,
We had to move forward. Yeah.
hmm.
So big kind of piece of a lot of ideas and Aries energy, and then we move into another Hellenistic moon void course starting
Right.
on the 25th. So it
And that
starts,
starts at 2, right?
yeah, so this Tuesday, around 2 p.m., the moon will trine Jupiter and Gemini, and then that will be its last Hellenistic aspect that it makes until all the way. So it's like
The
half of the day of
27th.
Tuesday, all of the day of Wednesday, and then most of the day of Thursday until about 5 p.m. on Thursday. Then the moon will be in Pisces squaring Jupiter.
So we got 26. So wait, I'm still on hours. We got
Mhm.
26th, 27th, and then you said around 5 p.m.
Yeah, this is pretty close
Which,
right there.
there we go. Around there, our hour. And we get
A square to Jupiter.
the moon. Where'd you go, moon? Squares, Jupiter. There we go. Moon and Pisces. Yep.
Yes.
Hmm.
So another one of those really long, just sort of, I've been having so many of these. It's interesting. But I feel like it's just this passage of time between how we're kind of in this in-between space of this long-term cycle slowly ending, and we want all this new energy to come in, but we're not quite there yet. And we're not quite at the point of newness. And so I think these Hellenistic moon void courses are just allowing space to process, you know?
Yeah, I wonder, if it's like the first aspect that it makes, that trine
Mhm.
to Jupiter, it like gives us, like you said, that extended processing time. Like, let's process that last aspect that we had with the moon for the next 2 days, and then we can pick back up with the square, you know?
Right. It's like you get all these new ideas for the trine to Jupiter, you get all this great insight, you get all this fresh things coming in, and then the square to Jupiter's like, but here's all the ways that it actually couldn't work.
Oh,
Or
goodness.
here's all the challenges to that, or here's like what is still unfolding with time kind of
Right,
thing.
because like the moon trining Jupiter, that's gonna feel like optimistic, like I have all these ideas and like this is fun and I feel like emotionally expansive and we're gonna be riding like it's like an innovative moon too, moon in Aquarius, it's like an innovative high. Like these are all the things that I could, be fulfilled by. And then running right into that square to Jupiter, it's like putting the brakes on it. But wait a second, like don't get carried away. There
Right.
are like these considerations that we have to make. Um, but yeah, with that like last aspect that we make with the trine to Jupiter, spending those 2 days, brainstorming or getting ideas down or, like riding that high for a little bit and just, using that energy to like, um, dream big and like think about like what would emotionally fulfill me in the future. I think it could be like a good time for that. Not necessarily taking any action on it, but just, checking in with like what are my emotional fulfillments.
Yeah, I do think this part, like this March, is a real good kind of restart to the new year. Like the new year wasn't very new with the Mars retrograde. Now Mars is direct in mid-February, but now we have these other two planets retrograde. So you're just kind of reviewing, hey, were those initial goals like very Jupiterian, right? Were those initial ideas and goals and philosophies that you
Realistic, yeah.
had? Yeah, they're still there, or do
Mm.
they have to change a bit? And it's okay to change a bit because really this spring, at the end of the spring, when everyone goes direct, you'll feel a lot more powerful in terms of moving them forward. It's okay to revisit them
Hmm.
now.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's another one of those. I think after this one, though, we do get a break because then the sun will be kind of in a position where it will catch a couple more aspects, but From there, also on the 27th, so also on this Thursday, Venus is retrograde back into Pisces and is also conjuncting Neptune immediately because Neptune's like right there at 29 degrees and like 50, so close to its entry into Aries, which will be our topic for next week. But
Mm.
um yeah, big kind of cool down of Venus. I think this will feel better for Venus. You know, she's leaving her detriment into a place of exaltation. It will definitely be delusional for Venus with Neptune right there, but Neptune's been so close to all the other planets. Like, I think our Neptunian influence is just kind of our reality now.
Yeah, right. I know it. Um, yeah, so if you have any planets here, like check your chart if you have any planets that Venus is passing over in your natal chart, there's going to be some kind of review as, Venus passes back over those. And I think Venus travels back to 24 degrees if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think so. And
Yeah,
then,
and
she is like kind of been traveling over this. So she was in Pisces like last time, I think mostly in January or so. And that is really kind of revisiting, like I said, with these, Hellenistic movement courses. Again, you're revisiting those themes in January and a little bit of February before she entered Aries. Like, this is that two-parter retrograde, essentially. So you're coming back to what was attraction in terms of ease and flow and Pisces, and now is that still something that's easy? Neptune, maybe this retrograde with Neptune can also highlight the ways you've been a little delusional about what you want to bring in or what relationships you've been a little bit delusional about.
mm, it's a very good point. Yeah. How could we gain a little bit more clarity over that? Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Venus will, we don't have too long though, like with Venus being here in Pisces.
No, she's got
Yeah.
a couple degrees, right? Like to the 26 or so, but you
Yeah.
know, she's still moving very slow. Like she'll be here for most of April, before she enters back into Aries, the end of April, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's still this, I think it's helpful. I think it helps balance out the Aries energy. Like we've been wanting to do so much. I think a little bit of water helps us tap back into flow, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, we'll have, I think, um, Venus might be the only planet hanging out there when she goes back into Aries. I think
I
Mercury
think
might be
Mercury
out
will be there well a little bit too, though.
at the later degrees. I would have to like skip
Yeah.
forward and look.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll talk about that later.
yeah. But she might like you said, if she moves direct and then like is almost one of the only planets there, she might have not too bad of an influence.
But overall, I think this is a sweet couple of days. Like, I mean, you're coming out of the Hellenistic move, of course, and then Venus returns to Pisces. She's conjuncting Neptune on a micro level. This is sweeter. This is good for a really big romance for yourself or within relationships. I mean, just being mindful of the Neptunian quality of like what's reality, but this really does kind of feel good, I think, overall. And, North Node is ponating Venus too a bit. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point though, with like it being very romantic energy. Like, um, it's a good day for like idealization or like, having those rose-colored glasses on and like allowing things to be dreamy for a little bit.
yeah, having a softer approach to life. The moon is going to pass over Venus on the 28th of that Friday. And then it will move into its next eclipse. So you're starting, like I think and this is a softer energy than it was leading up to the last eclipse we had. The moon was like opposite Saturn and like messing with Mars. And so this time the moon gets to meet with Venus and Neptune before it gets into the eclipse on the 29th. So I think it is just a little bit of ease. We haven't had a lot of ease, I think, in the sky. So it's giving that. But then of course we do have our eclipse on Saturday, early morning on the 29th. It'll be around 9 degrees of Aries there.
Let me
Um,
move the hours back There we
And then it
go.
will be like kind of, quieter eclipse, but
There we go.
eh, it's still ruled by Mars and Cancer.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So this eclipse really doesn't have any direct aspect. I mean, there's a soft sextile to Pluto, there is a little sextile to Jupiter coming up, but it's just the ruled by the Mars and Cancer is what catches me. It's like, oh, great. But this is also the last Aries eclipse. So we started having Aries eclipse in 2023 of April. And we kind of bounced back and forth, but this is our final one. And we are done with Aries eclipses.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, do we use bounds for looking at transits, or bounds are just for natal charts?
I mean, we can. I haven't used it a lot in transits, but you can definitely can do it. Yeah, this one's in the bounds. Is it in the bounds of Venus?
So Mars will be in the bounds of Jupiter, and then the sun and the moon in the bounds of Venus. But you also said we got that little sextile to Jupiter there. So it makes me think, we got a bit of Jupiterian influence here going on, um,
Hmm.
and having some communication with that Jupiter and Gemini.
Yeah, I do think there's this kind of feeling of hope because I mean, if you dial it back, wherever Aries has been in your chart for the past 2 years when we've been having these North Node eclipses, there has been an area of really big growth and really
Mm-hmm.
big expansion. And now
Mm-hmm.
this is the final new moon eclipse, and this can be where things click and things start to fall into place, and you really start to feel like that aha moment of terms of like, this is what I've been growing towards. This is the action I've been called to take, that like warrior call of like
Like
Aries
archetype, yeah.
energy. Yeah, that archetype of like stepping into that power.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it would be like that maturation process of the warrior, like the warrior doesn't just like emerge a warrior one day, he usually goes through like trainings and like has to dedicate time and effort to the craft of becoming the warrior. And that is like what's been happening with those eclipses is we've been having to like have that initiation and that completion and, perfecting our craft in that area so that we can emerge like very strong and powerful in that area. But like Maddie said, it'll be, this final eclipse that's like, you've completed your final task and like you're on your way to like receiving your warrior diploma in that area. And it's like, there you go, you did it.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it is like, because I mean, for myself, just reflecting on like the eclipses here, it has been a battle. It has been a battle of wanting to initiate so many different things in this
Hmm.
area and how I beliefs and what my beliefs are and how I grow. And there is this feeling of like, okay, I can finally commit to these now. I can commit to this new direction. I can commit to this philosophy and this belief. I can finally really dial into the space. And I mean, I do think it's just still a slight bit of a review happening with Mars still backtracking over Cancer. Like there's still that slowness in terms
Hmm.
of the action, but maybe with the sun and moon being your mind and your body, like you feel it, like within you, like this is it though.
Yeah, yeah, like this is the direction and the way. Yeah, Maddie has her ninth house is Aries. So that's
Yes.
like the reference to the beliefs and all that stuff. Yeah, mine has been all like 12th house stuff and I've definitely had like been in monk mode, like the past
Yeah.
2 years, like grinding away at school and things like that. But seemingly like in a way I've disappeared from the world, from the outside world.
Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, if you really want to dial in, I have it's these eclipses that just the Aries eclipses have been happening really only in April. So they started April, late April to 2023, sorry, like April 20th, 2023, and then again early April in 2024, and now we're in late March of 2025. So that's when we've been having these big pushes. big initiations, and now you're finally wrapping up over the past 2 years of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
is, so I don't know. Yeah, maybe it is a little bit softer. It's a little more helpful. Um, it's just the terms of things truly manifesting. I think it'll take a little bit of time until, April, May, when planets go direct and Mars leaves Cancer.
Right. Agreed. Yeah.
All right. So after this eclipse, later on the 29th of that evening, we just wrap up our final aspects. So on the Saturday, then Mercury will also retrograde back into Pisces and will also conjunct Neptune. And then we're just left with like the sun and moon in Aries, and all these big stellium has shifted back into Pisces.
Right. Sorry, I keep
There you
switching.
go. You got it right there.
Okay, it's like it's jumping around and then I can't see where did it go. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, so now we have quite a kind of pile up in Pisces, and especially in the later degrees of Pisces. So if you have mutable energy, you're really starting to feel this review for yourself personally. And, the Mercury, Neptune is a little bit more of that delusional quality as well, but softer, sweeter, poetic energy is too.
Yeah, it's a good time for like you mentioned, poetic stuff, gentle communication, communicating in an artistic or expressive way. You know, actually, people who have like Venus Neptune aspects, or sorry, not Venus, Mercury Neptune aspects, um, they actually probably have difficulty communicating in like traditional ways. So they need to rely on like artistic mediums or other things like that to like convey their point. Um, so it might be a really good time for you to try to like channel different, like using different things to communicate, like communicating through music or writing or art in some way. Just to express yourself, like what you truly want to say, that you can't say maybe in another way, in a more like refined or blunt manner.
Right, and it's almost like it's a great way to use those different methods in terms of processing what the eclipse brought up. Because with
Mhm.
that new moon eclipse that happened, Mercury was still in Aries, and then Mercury, so being in the same sign in that eclipse, Mercury was like gathering all this information, and retrogrades back into Pisces. It's like, okay, I have all these real big ideas. I understand my calling or my warrior beliefs now, but I now, in terms of planning and processing, I know it's slower. I know it's softer. I know I need to like feel into my body with it and feel into the collective realm, and you kind of communicate and process that way. Sort of a
Yes.
cool down.
I'm sorry, my mic.
That's okay. Um,
But yeah, you're very right about that because like it's like we need to like go back into the clutches of Pisces to like be able to heal and process because the reason why Mercury in Pisces is in detriment is because we're spending all that time processing and healing and nurturing and not really like caring about the details and like other matter of fact things. Yeah, so like you said, it's almost nice that it goes back there to like give us a minute to like retreat.
right. And I think the last piece of this, the last kind of significant element is that they're retrograding back into Pisces right as Neptune is about to enter into Aries. So it's almost like they're also giving information and messages about Neptune's last bit of Pisces, like Neptune's last 13, 14-year romp through Pisces is over, and this is kind of the ending and delusion of that.
That's such a good point too. Yeah, it's like the final speech, what are we
Yeah,
it does pass through Neptune one more time before like Mercury will pass by Neptune one more time when it goes direct.
but it will
Um
be in Aries.
oh it will. Oh yeah, it
Yeah,
will. You're right. Yeah, so it
it will
is
be.
like
This
the
is the last time
final.
it's happening in Pisces.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so we get that like graduation speech of Neptune.
Yeah,
You know?
really. Neptune's like, this is all I have to tell you. Look at all the ways that you have, worked with the collective or felt into the collective humanity and the emotions attached to that and the empathy you gathered. Yeah,
I
so
think
much
we all
there.
did become like if I do reflect, I can't say at the beginning of Neptune's transit because I was younger and not as aware, but
Right.
I will say that like I do notice that we are quite empathetic as a collective at the moment. There's a lot of focus on like social issues and like what's right and what's just, and are we being compassionate? And I have noticed like a lot of people carry a lot of like weight and heaviness around social issues and like feeling like, wars and things like that are not right. And like people, coming together to help people who are suffering and things like that. So I have noticed definitely like Neptune being in Pisces.
Right. I feel like with Neptune and Pisces, I don't have the exact year, but I was thinking like, in terms of you're right, like if we zoom out in terms of the entire world history of things, like we have not been very empathetic humanity, like
Oh, yeah.
we've always been in this war. There's always been this us versus them mentality. There's always been this sort of like, oh well, if that's their problem to deal with kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And since though it was like 2011 when Neptune first entered into there, so like from there we've had like gay marriage has been allowed. We've been able to be like, yes, people can be who they want to be. Women's rights has significantly, trans rights have finally
Mm-hmm.
been able to be talked about. Like you can talk about trans people without being ostracized. Like
Mm-hmm.
um, there was this more collective understanding that, hey, we're all humans, I think, through this time and that peacetime. But of course, Neptune entering Aries can be the challenge of that. It always swings in one direction and the other direction gets triggered in terms
Yeah,
of
it's like the
like,
pendulum, yeah, Libra.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
Richard Tarnas touched on Neptune and Pisces a bit also with his book. He was talking about like Neptune's pass through. I think he did talk. Did you
he
do you
doesn't really
remember?
talk about, well, he doesn't really talk about the signs. So I don't know
Oh,
if
more
that was
about
it.
like
He,
the
the planetary
planetary.
interactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it may have been more about like Uranus and Neptune or something,
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
still like that still archetype of just the Pisces being the collective and that kind of emotional feeling we get with people like spirituality has definitely increased significantly through that past decade and a half, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what we see as spiritual and acceptable. So I don't know. I mean, it will be interesting though to see how those things get challenged too with Saturn coming in the mix. But we'll talk more about Neptune and Aries next week when that actually happens.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to say about that. I think that can be a really interesting discussion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But this does wrap up our week. I mean, even though we have this new moon eclipse, I think this is kind of a softer week. It's just we are shifting energies again. And it can bring a lot of change and that can bring a little bit more of awareness back into things. So kind of shifting back in Aries and Pisces, but you get that new moon eclipse in Aries, which will really help solidify a direction and beliefs and power.
Yeah,
What you're
and
feeling power to.
for sure. And since the signs are so different too, we can all kind of feel like we're at a little like a tug of war, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so I think, we'll all be feeling that a bit. But it's a big week, obviously. So yeah, let us know how it is. If you are on socials and you are having like some kind of experience with an aspect or with the eclipses, please like share it and tag us because we love to hear about stories related to like astrological transits and like what's going on in your personal life. Um, so yeah, just check in and we'd love to hear.
Yeah. So we will see you next week. We're on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Two Girls Talk Transits. And we'll be back next week.
Bye.
Bye.